Nefertiti was the find of the century and the start of a fateful liaison. Our finder secured the treasure for Germany, and in doing so created a resentment that still simmers in Egypt today. We follow a trail deep underground as we attempt to uncover the secrets of a world-famous bust and reveal the other face of Nefertiti. In the corridors of the Egyptian Museum in Berlin, preparations are underway for a spectacular examination of an almost 3,500-year-old masterpiece. The world-famous bust of Nefertiti is transported under strict security in a protected, air-conditioned case. Tension mounts as the armored glass case is opened. An insurance company has put the value of the bust at $390 million. But for the museum's director, the real worth of the piece is impossible to estimate. Only a handful of people are allowed to handle the star of the exhibition. Professor Dietrich Wildung, the man responsible for the whole undertaking, wants to unravel the last secrets of the bust. Will the examination reveal clues as to what Nefertiti really looked like? Can it finally end the rumors that it's a fake? And how, and using what materials, did the sculptor create this unique piece? In Egypt, archaeologist Professor Barry Kemp is following a different Nefertiti mystery, the trail of her great discovery. Egyptologist keeps being drawn back to the place where Nefertiti's journey began almost 100 years ago. Kemp's destination is a long-vanished desert city where he's been looking for relics for nearly 30 years. In a remote region about 300 kilometers south of Cairo, the pharaoh Akhenaten created a metropolis in a desert called Amarna. In 1912, a German architect turned Egyptologist began to uncover sensational stone sculptures in the ruins of Amarna. His name was Ludwig Burckhardt, and his life was as puzzling as his discoveries. He liberated many faces of a long-forgotten world from the dust of millennia, including this granite head of Nefertiti. Almost a century later, Barry Kemp made a discovery with a fascinating connection to his predecessor. In the rubble left behind by Burckhardt, Kemp found fragments of mottled granite. They reminded him of the head of Nefertiti, which had been discovered by the German. The finds from Kemp's digs were kept in the storeroom at Amarna, among them hundreds of granite fragments, some minute. The archaeologist was convinced that he'd found the body to match the granite head of Nefertiti, now at the Egyptian Museum in Berlin. Fragment by fragment, he pieced the puzzle together, and indeed, female characteristics could be made out, but he had no proof. So Kemp asked the Burden Museum to send an exact copy of the sculpture so he could see if the head and body did in fact match. At the moment of truth, he found the pieces fitted seamlessly onto the broken edges. A scientific discovery that led back to the story of the find of the century.
I'm very aware of having 100 years of archaeology and archaeologists behind me, and in fact Burckhardt started here more or less 100 years ago. And so there's a long progression of people who worked here and made discoveries. And in this particular instance, it's a very satisfying thing to find a direct link between oneself and one's far distant predecessor.
In the year 1895, Ludwig Burckhardt arrived in Egypt in the service of the German Academy of Sciences. The young engineer was fascinated by the pharaonic architecture and explored the pyramids at Abu Sir. Burckhardt was both a scientist and an adventurer. He tried to get into the burial chamber, but discovered that grave robbers had been there before him. From the start, Burckhardt used the medium of photography to document his studies. He described each and every column and inscription in the ruined temple. But Burckhardt was not only interested in archaeology. While in Egypt, he met Mimi Cohen, a banker's daughter who was traveling with her parents. It was love at first sight. Ludwig and Mimi became inseparable, and in 1903 they got married. They shared a lifelong fascination with archaeology and were prominent figures in Cairo society.
Steht auch für Sonne und diesen Buchstaben will ich vergessen.
Burckhardt had a glittering scientific career ahead of him. His combination of talent and ambition gave him an expertise that was much in demand. He began by cataloguing the statues in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. With his detailed records, he was the initiator of the Catalogue Général, in which all artifacts were registered. Burckhardt was the soul of the project, which is still going on today. The experience trained his eye for the high art of the ancient Egyptians and gave him unique knowledge. Today, Dr. Cornelius von Pilgrim heads the institute founded by Ludwig Burckhardt, and he's trying to uncover the secrets of Burckhardt's life. In the basement, he finds hitherto undiscovered treasures. Almost the entire Burckhardt legacy has remained intact, although for decades no one has taken any serious interest in Nefertitis' discoverer. Cornelius von Pilgrim finds a case full of correspondence between Ludwig and Mimi. The archaeologist lives and works with his wife Beatrice in Burckhardt's villa on the Nile. Together the couple have reconstructed the life of Ludwig and Mimi, who are now as familiar as their own grandparents.
So, what have you found in there?
There must be hundreds of them, still sealed up. No one has opened them since.
1904, that must have been around the time they met. Love letters?
Das Faszinierende an Borchardt ist, dass
The fascinating thing about Borchardt is he was one of the great all-round scholars of his time, who didn't concentrate on just one subject, but could use his qualifications as an engineer and an archaeologist to investigate widely varying subjects.
Also das sieht man auch an der Privatbibliothek, die haben sich für Politik...
You can see this clearly in their library. They wanted to know about politics, philosophy. They looked at caricatures. They subscribed to almost all the publications of the time. You could say they were interested in, to use a modern term, lifestyle. They were also great socialites. They gave lots of parties. So it's easy to see they weren't so different from ourselves. They worked hard, but played hard too.
Mimi was an active part of Borchardt's life, and her inheritance meant financial security, something that most archaeologists of the day could only dream of.
He needed her at his side. You get the feeling it was important for him, and when they weren't together, they wrote each other every day. He told her everything that happened from day to day, like we write text messages or emails. So she was always up to date, and she could give her advice and ideas. Whenever she could, she accompanied Ludwig on digs, and that was very important to him too. You can see it was a very symbiotic relationship.
Borchardt was not only an archaeologist and a scholar, he was also working on behalf of the Imperial German Consulate General. His mission was to purchase rare items from the time of the pharaohs that would put German museums on a par with the Louvre and the British Museum. And so it was that Borchardt came into contact with dealers in antiquities who supplied the private market with highly sought-after mummies and sculptures. Borchardt, however, was looking for rare papyri, for which there was great demand in Germany. Thanks to his connections, he also had access to valuable information about the best claims, the most promising places to make interesting finds. In 1907, sculptures of extraordinary beauty began to turn up on the market, discovered by grave robbers in Tel El Amarna. Were they what put the archaeologist on the trail of his greatest discovery? Digging in the forgotten city of the pharaoh Akhenaten, with its temples and palaces, barracks, houses and workshops, must have been a great challenge for Borchardt. Barry Kemp has also studied the ruins of the desert metropolis of Amarna in detail. Borchardt was sure that there must have been treasure in the sand just a few meters beneath his feet. But it was here, in a simple clay brick hut that was the workshop of the brilliant sculptor Thutmose, that Borchardt discovered the find of the century, the coloured bust of Queen Nefertiti, the powerful wife of Akhenaten.
Know much about these houses in general?
No, we don't.
Pharaoh Akhenaten declared the sun god Aten the only true god of his kingdom, and made Amarna the center of the new cult. The legendary Nefertiti went with him from Thebes to the desert city. Who she actually was remains a mystery to this day. Her name meant the beauty is come, perhaps because she was of foreign origin. As queen, she ruled at Akhenaten's side and took part as an equal in all religious ceremonies. Against American and French competition, Borchardt managed to secure for Germany the digging rights to the ruins at Amarna. His financier was the Berlin textile magnate, James Simon. Right from the start, the undertaking on the ancient site of the Tutmo's workshop was blessed with success. But Burckhardt estimated that it would take 17 years to uncover all the desert's treasures. One of the first finds was a bust of King Akhenaten. Burckhardt described to Seaman the discovery of likenesses that surpass everything we have hitherto known. More faces followed, with astonishingly realistic features. Burckhardt took personal charge of the excavations of the sculptor's workshop. In total, 26 fragile sculptures of stone and plaster were discovered, some incomplete, icons from a forgotten world that is still full of unsolved riddles today. The events of the 7th of December 1912 were recorded by Burckhardt in his diary. Before us in the rubble, at about knee height, a flesh-colored neck with painted ribbons appeared, he wrote. Life-size, colorful bust of Queen was the pronouncement, and we carried on working carefully with our hands. It was a miracle that this fragile bust had survived almost 3,500 years in the sand. Burckhardt never recorded his feelings during these dramatic hours. From the very beginning, his greatest treasure was a matter of secrecy. When the piece was completely uncovered, he wrote, we were holding the most lifelike work of Egyptian art in our hands. Nefertiti means the beauty is come. People will worship her as divinely beautiful. But Burckhardt's astonishing find, and the way he strangely underplayed it, led some people to suspect him of trickery. This is the Burckhardt Villa in Cairo. Barry Kemp wants to reconstruct the events surrounding the discovery, together with Cornelius and Beatrice von Pilgrim. They've decided to make documents from the Burckhardt estate public for the very first time. Photos showed that there were prominent visitors to our manor on the day of the discovery, a coincidence that gave rise to rumors.
Es begab sich ja durch Zufall, dass am selben Tag, als die Büste...
By complete chance, on the day that the bust of Nefertiti was discovered, a party from the court of Saxonia visited the dig. In fact, Burckhardt was worried that they would return to Cairo and talk too much and attract attention to the finds, which he wasn't keen on at all.
Aufmerksamkeit erzeugen würden für die Funde, und das schätzte er gar nicht.
If it had been up to him, Burckhardt would have kept the discovery of Nefertiti quiet. Even to Muni, he referred only to his scientific records.
Now tell me about all the excitement.
I told you all about it in my diary, remember? I was almost speechless. We all had the same peculiar feeling, as if we were looking at a human face.
What a coincidence that today of all days, the Crown Prince of Saxony and his wife should be there.
I do wish they wouldn't make such a fuss about it. All that to do just makes things more complicated. From the very beginning, Burckhardt tried to play down events. This was confirmed by letters that have only now been discovered. Akhenaten and his family are beginning to bore me, he wrote to Mimi. And in the next sentence, he reported the purchase of a sausage slicer.
Also man liest aus den Briefen nicht heraus, dass Borchardt das als einen sensationellen Fund.
There's nothing in the letters that says Borchardt saw the find as sensational and wanted to carry on digging immediately. For him, it seems to have been a find like any other. Of course, one has to take into account that this one building had not only produced the bust of Nefertiti, but numerous other busts, which they then, as he says, had to carry away in baskets. Borchardt was aware of the value of what he'd excavated. He dubbed his find My Colourful Queen, and compared it to masterpieces of the Renaissance. But the moment of truth was approaching, when Borchardt would have to hand over half his finds to Egypt. The evening before the finds were to be divided up, Borchardt and his colleagues took their leave of Nefertiti. The archaeologist gave no clue as to his strategy for the fateful day.
For the life of me, I can't see how we get the colourful queen out of Egypt. If Nefertiti should ever be exhibited alongside the other finds and artifacts of our museum, Berlin will have the finest museum after Cairo.
Arriving at the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, Harry Kemp is still trying to solve the mystery of Nefertiti's discovery. In the archive of the German Oriental Society, he meets Olaf Martis, who's investigated the circumstances surrounding the division of artifacts. Only a handful of scientists have ever been allowed access to the Borchardt file, and until now, the correspondence has been strictly off-limits for cameras. In letters to his patron, James Seaman, Borchardt likened his work in Armada to the world-famous excavations at Olympia and Pergamon. No other nation will have anything comparable to show, he wrote.
After Simon had learned of the bust's significance, he was prepared to pay a great deal of money for it, up to 26,000 Goldmark, an unbelievably high price, exceeding any amount ever spent on Egyptian artifacts by a wide margin.
But what happened when the goods were divided? He could be pretty cunning when he needed to be, with one colleague's opinion of Borchardt. Even today, rumors abound that he withheld Nefertiti from the Egyptian authorities. There's no proof of this, although it is certain that for scientific reasons, Borchardt didn't want to split up the collection of sculptures. But if he didn't, what was left for the Egyptians?
Borchardt was clever enough to present the two shares in such a way that, on the one side, the one destined for the Egyptians, there was a large altar painting that Cairo didn't yet have and that Cairo wanted above all else. And in the other half was the bust of Nefertiti, not right at the top, but it was in there. And Lefebvre, the Commissioner of Excavation and Division, would have had the opportunity to inspect this half too. But he obviously didn't. Borchardt managed to get the bust for the German side, and by completely legal means.
Borchardt's bait was an altar painting from a temple in Amarna, a family portrait of Akhenaten and Nefertiti with their children. That things should turn out this way, wrote Borchardt, was due to Monsieur Lefebvre's inferior ability to judge artifacts and my negotiating skill. After the finds had been divided, Borchardt wrote to James Seaman saying HM leaves today. HM stood for Her Majesty and was an example of Borchardt's sense of humor. At the same time, he requested that the matter be handled in Berlin, not just discreetly, but confidentially. The colourful queen was to be top secret, and Borchardt revealed the reason for this. Otherwise, we won't get a single decent piece at future divisions. The archaeologist also feared for his license to excavate if the case became public. Out of consideration to Burckhardt, Nefertiti gathered dust in James Seaman's house for 12 long years. Today, the majestic bust is the biggest attraction on Museum Island in Berlin, and no one is immune to her elegance. When the divine beauty was exhibited for the first time in March 1924, she quickly became the first pin-up girl in history. Millions of women copied her makeup. She was celebrated as the most beautiful woman on earth, and those who saw her were gripped by pharaoh fever. But as the first pictures went around the world, the oldest woman in Berlin became the stuff of scandal. Feeling they'd been robbed of the immense value of the bust, Egypt demanded its return. An exchange was proposed, Nefertiti for 2 valuable statues, one from the new and one from the old kingdom. Editorial cartoons portrayed Burckhardt as the kidnapper of the beautiful queen, and a war of words broke out between the German and Egyptian presses. It's impossible to know what must have been going through the archaeologist's mind faced with this campaign, but he was certainly aware of it. He received a weekly digest of the world's press, which documented the quarrel about the colourful queen.
Any news on the fight for the colourful queen?
At the moment it looks as if Germany is going to agree to some sort of exchange.
These caricatures are very amusing.
If it wasn't such a terribly serious matter for us.
I always expected these problems, you know. This exhibition has brought us nothing but trouble.
Ludwig Burckhardt moved among the crowds of forgers in Cairo with his eyes peeled. As an agent acting for German museums, he was a welcome guest. The archaeologist became passionate about uncovering forgeries. From time to time, he even commissioned fakes so that he could study the forgers' methods. Burckhardt made a slant of his research on forgery techniques, and in 1927 caused a scandal when he revealed several artifacts in prestigious European museums to be fakes. I've only now been able to take up the hunt for fakes again, he wrote, and I've found more than I wanted to. No collection that has been added to in the last 10 years is free of forgeries.
Das Interesse von Burckhardt an den Fälschungen und Fälschern beruht sicher darauf.
Burckhardt's interest in fakes and forgers is certainly based on the fact that he was originally sent here to buy artworks. So of course he had to be well informed if he was going to do his job properly. There was already a thriving forgery industry in those days, and he had to be sure that what he bought was genuine.
Sicher sein, dass das, was kauft, auch echt war.
Almost a century later in Berlin, a scientific examination of Nefertiti is about to take place. In the Imaging Science Institute at the renowned Charité University Hospital, the team aims to reveal what lies behind the immaculate mask, the real face of the beautiful woman from the Nile. They've been preparing for this moment for months. Where normally patients would be examined with the latest diagnostic technology, tonight it's Nefertiti who'll be under the scanner. Even Professor Dietrich Fildel, who's responsible for the colourful Queen's presence here, feels the tension. was air-conditioned to protect the bust from damage. A cushion for the Queen's slender neck had to be fashioned before she could enter the tube. It takes less than a minute for Nefertiti to be X-rayed, layer by layer. In the Armana collection at the Cairo Museum, Harry Kemp meets Dr. Zahi Hawass.
I always wonder about Burckhardt, his publication of Abusir that I did follow and study, the catalogue general that he did for the Cairo Museum. It's very impressive to show that he was a good Egyptologist. But on the other side, there is another face, a man who devoted his life to take artifacts from here to Berlin. People say that he helped to smuggle 15,000 artifacts from Egypt to Berlin.
Hawass is Egypt's premier treasure hunter and head of the Egyptian Antiquities Organization, and he wants the colorful queen back. He thinks that Burckhardt would have been able to judge the true value of the bust. Hawass believes that Burckhardt was morally obliged to hand over the unique artifact to the Egyptian authorities, although he wasn't legally obliged to do so. Of all of Burckhardt's treasures, only one portrait of Nefertiti currently resides in Cairo.
Why Egypt want the bust of Nefertiti back? Two important things in my opinion. The first, that the bust of Nefertiti in Berlin is the icon of our Egyptian identity. And the second, that this bust left Egypt, in my opinion, illegally. I will fight, and I will bring Nefertiti back home. And as you say, home means Amarna.
In 1933, Adolf Hitler declared Nefertiti his personal icon. "I will never give the head of the queen up," he said. "It is a masterpiece, a jewel, a treasure." "I will build her a museum in Berlin," Hitler went on to promise, "and I dream of placing this wonder in the middle of a stately hall, crowned by a dome." Hitler's plans never amounted to anything. But the struggle for Nefertiti came to an end, temporarily. Not much is known about the Burckhardts during the Third Reich. For the first time, Beatrice von Pilgrim reveals that when the anti-Semitic regime in Germany claimed Nefertiti for its own, the Jewish couple withdrew from public life. Germans are arresting Germans because of their views and putting them in concentration camps, wrote Mimi to the local German women's group in Cairo. And any sense of injustice seems to have died in the hearts of most Germans.
Und dann schreibt sie weiter, dass sie eben nicht in den Verdacht kommen will,
And then she writes that she doesn't want anyone to think that she could remain silent on the matter, but she wants to set an example. And so she resigns the chair of the German women's group. This shows that they knew what was coming, and that very early on, even as far away as Cairo, it was possible to see what was happening, and they reacted.
Und sie haben einfach reagiert.
Burckhardt, who had always been interested in politics, now feared for his life. And things seemed no better in Cairo, where he also faced persecution over Nefertiti. However, for Ludwig and Mimi, leaving their Egyptian home was unthinkable.
Things over there go on this way. What will become of the Institute?
Thank goodness we can stay in Egypt.
Yes, but we must ensure everything's in the hands of the right people.
The X-ray scanner offers up the first pictures of inside the Queen's head. This is was the moment the whole team has been waiting for. Initial investigations show that the bust is made up of different materials. There seems to be a second sculpture of limestone inside the painted layer of plaster. At the same time, this is a sort of health check for the oldest woman in Berlin. Very fine cracks would show up under this level of scrutiny, but none are found. Using high-definition computer tomography, the scientists are hoping to reconstruct the face of the second Nefertiti, right down to the signature of her creator. This experiment should also remove any remaining doubts about the authenticity of the bust. In 1981, a mysterious stranger turned up in the Amana collection in Berlin, identifying himself as Major Edzard Volkers. Through a series of vague comments, he planted the seed of suspicion that the Nefertiti in the Egyptian Museum could be a fake. Volkers claimed to have given the order for the removal of Nefertiti from the bunker in which it was stored. What really happened in those dark days, no one knows for certain. In the confusion of World War II, the treasures from the city's museums had been put in the Berlin Zoo bunker to protect them from bombing raids. But was the colourful queen still in Berlin? Volker's evidence contradicted accounts that spoke of Nefertiti being taken to the salt mines of Thuringia some days beforehand. Could there have been two busts, one real and one copy? Barry Kemp wants to know the truth about the confusion surrounding Nefertiti, and he's come to meet a man who studied the movements of the bust during the war. Klaus Goldman's passion and profession is looking for stolen art treasures. So how credible are Volker's claims? In a sworn statement, he asserted that he saw Nefertiti in an armored display case in the bunker in Berlin Zoo on the 5th of April 1945. But Volker spoke of only one bust. So where did the rumors about an original and a copy come from? There are photographs of a master copy in stone from which plaster casts are still made today. And Otto Kimmel, General Director of the Berlin Museum, knew one of the first customers.
While Kimmel was on his sickbed, he told of an exact copy being made at the beginning of the 1930s on the express orders of Adolf Hitler.
Rumors abound about the dictator's motives. One idea was that he wanted to dupe the Egyptians with an extremely convincing copy. If this was the case, the original would have had to remain under lock and key, never to be seen again. The Führer order of the 6th of March 1945 stated that it was not Major Volkers, but Hitler himself who ordered the removal of art treasures from the bunker. It does seem certain that under heavy air bombardment, Nefertiti's Odyssey led to Thuringia, where she was supposed to be hidden in the salt mines. However, confusion reigns as to the number of the chest in which she was transported. According to registration documents, chest number 34 containing Nefertiti arrived in the Thuringian town of Kaiserode on the 27th of March 1945. But these documents contradict the original evacuation list, which has Nefertiti leaving the Berlin Museum in chest number 28. Were the numbers switched for reasons of secrecy? Or did chest 28 with the real Nefertiti disappear in the chaos of bombing? After the appearance of Major Falkers, even the experts were no longer sure where the mysterious journey of the original had ended. A descent almost 600 meters into the unknown is the most exciting part of Barry Kent's detective work so far. The expedition passes through several kilometers of the Merkers saltworks mine in Thuringia. For the archaeologist, the contrast could not be greater between the warm desert sand of Armana, where Nefertiti was found, and the dark, damp tunnels where she spent the end of the war. The first stop is the room in which Hitler's officers stashed the gold from the Reichsbank and some of the Berlin Museum treasures. On the 4th of April, 1945, a unit from the American Third Army penetrated into the mine. Even today, it's not hard to imagine the feeling of triumph they must have had looking at all that gold. It was a treasure of unimaginable proportions. Nazi propaganda boss Josef Goebbels noted, "Our entire reserves of gold, a total of 100 tons, have fallen into the hands of the Americans. In addition, colossal numbers of art treasures." The shafts used to transport the treasures to the bottom are today full of rubble. But for Kemp, the tour of the underworld is an incomparable adventure. Here, 600 meters down, you can imagine the apprehension of the GIs as they pressed forward into the dark, labyrinthine tunnels. The last stop is the place where Nefertiti was found. Behind this modest-looking door, the find of the century survived the guns and the bombs. At first, American Army newspapers identified Nefertiti as the mummified head of Tutankhamun's mother-in-law. But soon it became clear that this was Burckhardt's colorful queen.
In that long odyssey which took her from Egypt to here for a short time, she has suffered vibrations of a hard journey, changes in temperature and humidity, and yet amazingly she has remained intact as one undamaged, beautiful statue. It is a real miracle that this has happened.
This is the other face of Nefertiti. The scientists have scanned the bust millimeter by millimeter and used the data to make 3D models of the interior. Hidden inside the bust is a second sculpture, a fascinating phenomenon that remains a mystery for archaeologists.
Die Computertomographie zeigt uns, dass die Nefertiti-Büste aus einem Kalkstein.
The computer tomography shows that the bust consists of a limestone blank, which has been adapted by adding layers of plaster some centimeters thick at decisive points to create the visible outer form. So, it's a multi-layered work process, with the artist first working in stone, and then getting his pot of plaster out, and shaping the ideal form step by step onto this stone blank.
An diesen Steinrohling anmodelliert.
Layer by layer, the computer strips off the plaster makeup to reveal the portrait of an older woman with crooked shoulders, a thin neck, and deep wrinkles around the mouth. Is this the true face of Nefertiti?
You're seeing the real skin and bone of Nefertiti, stripped down. Comes more an abstract image. Whether it's more of a portrait of her, I'm not so sure. Brings out the hardness of her face.
For the scientists, the bust is still full of mystery. But this much is certain. The sculptor shaped her face to perfection with the finest makeup. She is not so much a picture of eternal youth as one of undying beauty.
There was someone who wanted Nefertiti that way. Probably not she herself, more likely the king, who said, "My Nefertiti is not a wrinkle-free cover girl. My Nefertiti has borne 6 children, or 7 or 8. Her face is marked by life, and that is how I want her to look."
Taking off the frontal light completely, you will see.
Even for the people who come into contact with Nefertiti every day, she remains mysterious. But here on Museum Island, the Queen's face now appears in a new light. For decades she was lit from the front and appeared to be the immaculate portrait of a young woman. But by changing the lighting, Professor Dietrich Wildung has revealed Nefertiti's hidden features. The eternally young girl now appears as a woman who has lived, with fine lines around her eyes and mouth.
Ich habe Nefertiti in früheren Jahren.
I used to think that Nefertiti had, and I'm exaggerating here greatly, an almost vulgar appearance, which was probably because in the past she'd been exploited so much commercially. The perfect, wrinkle-free, youthful face, which seemed so devoid of life. And now I'm discovering so many traces that have been caused by life, and she's gaining in character. She's becoming an individual.
Nefertiti's journey is over, for now. Unscathed, she has returned to the old museum. Almost 3,500 years have passed since a sculptor of genius in a dark hut used his magical touch to create one of the most famous female portraits of all time. In the ruins of that workshop, Ludwig Burckhardt rediscovered her, one of the greatest art treasures in the world today. In a brilliant coup, Burckhardt brought Nefertiti to Berlin. And there the Egyptian icon stands to this day, the majestic face of a long-lost world.
She stands in the German capital, representing an ancient culture, a symbol of the significance the old world has for the new. As the Egyptian ambassador Mohammed El-Arabi says, "Is it not wonderful that the capital of Germany defines itself by, amongst other symbols, an ancient Egyptian queen?"
Perhaps Nefertiti's Odyssey isn't over, and she'll one day return to where she came from.
I'm something of a romantic at heart, and perhaps in the future it would be nice to see Nefertiti actually come home, and home is Tel el-Amarna, and the Egyptian Antiquities Organization is building here a small museum, and this would be the absolutely perfect place for her to come to. But perhaps that won't happen in my lifetime.
The most beautiful woman in the world remains an exquisite object of desire.